there, aquatic adventurers. Welcome back to Musicland Stories, the origin point for all music and adventure stories in the known universe, and some of the unknown ones. And we're here at the Musicland Concert Hall. I'm your trusted narrator, the captain, and it's time for us to dive back into the watery depths and find a new wave. When last we left our gallant crew, we'd been chasing after the legendary last Leviathan, hoping to capture its majestic song, when our submarine came upon what looked to be a sunken city with sprawling spires and spiraling structures that stretched in every direction. It was disorienting, to say the least. And coming from a navigator, that's never good. The buildings were all worn down and weathered by the brine. Too much salt and water will do that over time. And by the looks of things, this lost city had been there for a while. As our ship came in closer, we could just barely make out strange symbols carved into the walls. Squiggly lines with pockmarked serifs, though certainly not like any language anyone had ever seen. And then there was the sound, a curiously quiet hum that warbled through the ruins. 8-year-old Ezra, our resident harmonica and accordion player, he was first to notice. "The vibes are off, man," he said. I just assumed he was referring to the generally creepy atmosphere. A chill moved through the rest of the crew, and it wasn't just the water. Even our fantastical castaway sailboy cowered in a corner with his flippers over his eyes, whimpering like a sad aquatic puppy, which he sort of was. But Ezra was onto something he couldn't quite articulate. He placed a hand on the wall of the submarine. "Dudes," he said, "there's something radical resonating here." Ezra told me to turn left, which I cheerily reminded him should be called port when you're on or underwater. Nautical directions are so confusing. Now, as the adult in the cockpit, I should remind you that it generally isn't safe to go exploring eerie ruins, especially if the vibes, as they say, are off. But it can make for a great story, and sometimes that's more important. Ezra urged me to steer the ship again, which I told him I was doing. Except we weren't moving, even though we still had half a tank of sonic submarine fuel. But before I had a chance to say anything, we heard a sudden splat! Ezra looked out the window just in time to see the purplish green sucker of an octopus tentacle squish against the glass and squeeze. "The vibes," he said, "are definitely off." Then there were screams. Lots and lots of screams, followed by a sort of light metallic crinkling, like a bag of gnarly bone chips. You have those on Earth, right? Either way, screaming is a fairly reasonable response to being grappled by a giant cephalopod. Not a particularly useful response, but understandable. While the rest of the crew fell into a panic, Ezra let his curiosity carry him. He bounced from porthole to porthole, eager to see the creature from every angle. As it turned out, the creature was just as curious. It peered back into the ship through the 5th starboard from the bow. Ezra saw the yellow slits of his vertical eyes waiting there, and stared right back. Boy and beast made eye contact and saw something in one another. Something that inspired Ezra to pull the harmonica out from his pocket and play. Do you know how a harmonica works? There are little reeds inside, each one tuned to a pitch on a Richter scale. A different Richter scale from the earthquake one, though maybe not, as we'll see. When the air moves over the reeds, when you breathe in or out through the instrument, it makes them move and play a note. Same with an accordion or concertina. Only there, you make the air move with your hands when you pump the bellows. Or when you drag a finger along the edge of a partially filled wine glass? On second thought, maybe you should ask a grown-up about that one first. But trust me, it makes a pretty cool sound, thanks to the same principle. So Ezra played his harmonica, and the vibrating reed seemed to harmonize with that warbling sound he'd heard in the ruins. When two waves of water crash together on the ocean, there are two things that can happen. They cancel each other out and the water rejoins the ocean, or they merge together and form an even bigger wave. The same thing happens sometimes when sound waves collide. It's called sympathetic vibration. And this time, Ezra's vibes were definitely on. The pitch he was playing on his mouth harp amplified the city song. The sound waves swelled into an ambient underwater symphony. "Whoa, dudes, are you digging this?" Ezra exclaimed. He could feel the music move the air around the ship. He had no idea what kind of reeds were out there, humming along with his harmonica. But it didn't really matter, because the song made something soften in the octopus's eyes. Boy and beast looked at one another again. They were picking up those bop bop good vibrations. Know what I mean? Wait, is that what Brian Wilson was trying to tell me? Doesn't matter. Because the octopus was picking up what we were putting down. Or at least it liked Ezra's song enough to loosen its tentacle grip on our ship. A sympathetic vibe between sentient creatures. Very cool. Good vibrations all around. But the octopus wasn't pulling away from the ship. It was peering inside, looking for Ezra, like it was trying to tell him something. But he was too busy feeling the vibes, riffing on his harmonica as the passive hum in the water grew bigger and bigger. The octopus bounced from window to window, just like Ezra had done before, but on the outside of the ship this time. It finally gave up and tapped the tawny tip of its tendril right against the glass. This, understandably, terrified the rest of my crew even more. But it did get Ezra's attention. He made eye contact with the octopus again, and the creature immediately gestured downward. Ezra ran to the porthole to see what they were pointing at. His jaw dropped open, and with it went his mouth harp, which fumbled to the floor with a clatter. Ezra barely noticed. You guys might want to see this," he said. But no one moved. Octopus attack, remember? Little stressful. So Ezra tried again. "I think I figured out why the vibes were off," he said. The rest of the crew moved cautiously towards the window. And let's just say that Ezra had a talent for understatement. Because just below, we could see the reddish glow of molten lava bubbling up from the cracks in the ocean floor. It seemed the strange murmur in the ruins of the city was actually the sound of an underwater volcano waking from its slumber. Oops. I rushed back to the steering wheel. The rest of the crew just sort of ran around in frantic circles screaming. But as the captain, it was my sworn duty to, not get us caught in a volcano blast. But before we had a chance to make yet another dramatically reckless change in direction, Ezra stopped me. Wait! He pointed out the window again. "I think she needs help." Sure enough, the octopus was down there, weaving through the freshly steaming geysers as she struggled to collect what looked like hundreds of little eggs. Some of them had even started hatching, with cute little baby tentacles writhing their way out. The warmth from the dormant volcano must have made for a perfectly cozy nest. A great place to raise an octopus family, as long as no one can come by with, say, a harmonica that could agitate the passive hum and cause it to erupt. But that was a conversation that I would have to have with Ezra later, because he had already run off to his bedroom to collect the rest of his aerophonic instruments. He knew that if he could find the right key, the right vibes, if you will, he could counteract the resonance from the volcano. make the waves collapse instead of combine and grow. While Ezra worked his harmonica magic, Omar and Kaylee fiddled with his busted-up accordion, as well as their own broken instruments, hoping to amplify the free reed frequency. Meanwhile, the twins Margie and Mingus grabbed their scuba gear and splashed outside with Sealboy to help the octopus evacuate her eggs. See, the octopus wasn't so scary after all. At least, not as scary as a volcano. Besides, she was just trying to help her kids. You'd be scared if a harmonica-playing submarine came too close to your family, too. Personal space is important, even underwater in some creepy sunken ruins. Inside our ship, the temperature was rising. The volcano was getting ready to blow. I flipped on our supersonic fuel gauge, hoping to collect some of the molten melodies to keep us moving. But the rumble was getting louder. The ship began to shake. The vibes, as they say, were a bit too much to handle. Luckily, Ezra found the right frequency just in time. He hummed a melody into his C-flat harmonica. I didn't even know they made C-flat harmonicas. And the riff resonated in just the right way to straighten out the ship and stall the steaming lava. Keyword being stall. A harmonica just isn't powerful enough to stop an entire volcanic eruption on its own, even in C-flat. Which meant it was my turn. I rushed over and picked up Ezra's old accordion, which had gotten all warped because of my driving, and bent it back into shape. I gave it a quick squeeze and the bellows, well, they bellowed out, augmenting Ezra's free reed blues into an epically good vibration. Bop, bop, and blam! The fortified frequency moved through the waves like an armored wall, holding back the volcano's fiery forces until they retreated back into the core. Unfortunately, the sound wave also shattered the rest of the ruined city into dust. But don't worry, it was fully evacuated of all its octo-baby kin, who now were cuddled together in the loading dock of our submarine, with their mother waiting right outside of the airlock. She was a bit too big to fit, so Ezra grabbed a scuba suit and went to greet his new tentacle friend. He swam out and offered her a big high five. Unfortunately, octopuses don't have fingers, though they do have plenty of arms to share, so she gave him a hug instead. Just before they parted ways, Ezra gave her one last gift, his C-flat harmonica. She placed it in her beak and hummed an eerily beautiful song as her flock of children swam along, eager to explore the depths beside her. With the crew gathered back on the ship, we waved goodbye to the octopus family and set a course for High Brazil. I had to readjust the sonar after all those vibes, both good and bad. But soon enough, we were back on the trail of the fabled last Leviathan. What else could possibly go wrong, right? Don't worry, you'll find out next week. Until then, this is your captain, out. Musicland Stories is a collaboration between Starglow Media and Double Elvis. Executive producers from Double Elvis are Jake Brennan and Brady Sattler. Executive producers from Starglow Media are Jed Baker and Agarenish A. Palmer. This episode of Musicland Stories was written by Tom Dunn. Alessandro Santoro is our showrunner. Narration by me, Nikki Lynette. Original score by Scott Janovitz. Story editing by Zeph Lundy. An episode mix by Matt Tahaney. Grown-ups, you can find more ad-free audio fun for the whole family by subscribing to Starglow Plus on Apple or wherever you listen to podcasts.